Not having cystic fibrosis is shown by the genotype with two capital C's. Having cystic fibrosis is shown by the genotype with two lowercase c's. Being a carrier of cystic fibrosis is shown by the genotype with a capital C and a lowercase c. In this scenario, a female who is a carrier of cystic fibrosis reproduces with a male who is not a carrier. Although cystic fibrosis is not sex-linked, colors are used to show how the offspring receive their genotype. The children shown here are 50% likely to be unaffected by cystic fibrosis, while the other children are 50% likely to be carriers. These results would hold true if the male were the carrier and the female was not affected. In this scenario, a female who is a carrier of cystic fibrosis reproduces with a male who is also a carrier. The children shown here are 50% likely to be carriers of cystic fibrosis, 25% likely to be unaffected, and 25% likely to be affected. In this scenario, a female who is affected by cystic fibrosis reproduces with a male who is a carrier. The children shown here are 50% likely to be affected by cystic fibrosis and 50% likely to be carriers. Once again, if the male were to be affected and the female were to be a carrier, the outcome would remain the same. In this scenario, in which a male and female, both affected by cystic fibrosis, conceive a child, the child has a 100% chance of being affected. However, this is unlikely because those affected by cystic fibrosis rarely live past the age of 30. Despite this, cystic fibrosis does not inhibit fertility. If a person with cystic fibrosis does decide to have children, in this case, the mother, each of the children will just be carriers as long as the father is not affected. Cystic fibrosis is an autosomal recessive disease. This means that two copies of the abnormal gene must be present in order for someone to have cystic fibrosis.